Okay, so if you guys have Canvas open, I want you to go ahead and go down to week 9, wire sculpture. So this week, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing a sculpture project. And actually, before I get started, I do want to mention if you guys have not turned in your graffiti assignments, please do that sooner rather than later so I can get those graded and get those back to you guys. But this week, we're going to move on and we're going to be doing a wire sculpture. And also, again, before I start, I want you guys to note this up here. It says once you open the assignment sheet file, it will have a notification at the top that says open with Google Docs. Do this and then you may begin editing the sheet. You need to make sure you do this, and I'm going to show you what I mean. So there will be 2 files, the presentation and the assignment sheet. So click on the assignment sheet. And then you can see here at the top, it says open with Google Docs. You're going to need to do that. Otherwise, you won't be able to edit this at all or submit your pictures. So go ahead and click open with Google Docs. And then here, you can start editing and typing in your answers. And also, as a forewarning, this link to the demo video is not correct. It should be a YouTube video, so I'm going to be posting that on Canvas later today. But I won't be able to re-upload this sheet, so just don't come here for the demo video. And we'll be going over, I guess I don't really need to go over the demo video, but just, this is the wrong link. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go through these questions before I start my presentation. So first of all, what is sculpture? You'll be able to answer that today while I go over my presentation. Number 2, what surface design did you choose to do for your sculpture? Go into detail about what you're planning on including in this design. So I'll go over this in a little bit, but you're going to have 3 options of how you want to design your sculpture. Why did you choose this rather than the other 2 options? Number 4 and number 2 are pretty similar, but explain why you designed your sculpture the way that you did. If you chose marbling, explain your color choice. If you chose the other 2, go into more detail. And then are you happy with the way your project turned out, or would you want to change it? And then you're going to post a picture of your project below. And before anybody starts getting worried, if you don't have materials at home to create a sculpture, that's okay, but you're still going to have to do the design aspect, and then also write about what kind of sculpture you would make if you had materials available to you. And we'll go over that a little bit more later. So I'm going to start my presentation. Here we go. So again, we're doing sculpture. So what is sculpture? So sculpture is the art of making 2- or 3-dimensional representative or abstract forms, especially by carving stone or wood or by casting metal or plaster. So we're actually not going to be carving stone or wood or metal or plaster. I don't expect you guys to do any of that. The in-person kids are using wire and nylon socks. So it can be something simple. You can use everyday items to make your sculpture. It doesn't have to be elaborate by any means. And then I included here, again, there's no real boundaries as to what a sculpture must be made out of. So again, you can use regular objects to create your sculpture. I wanted to include this quote too. It says, "It is rather the name of an art that grows and changes and is continually extending the range of its activities and evolving new kinds of objects." So it's, again, very broad, and it's continually growing as to what is accepted to be a sculpture. So we're going to go through some artists here. Jackson, that is okay. You do not have to use wire if you don't want to, and I'll go through that in a little bit more later in detail. So just don't worry about that quite yet, okay? So we'll go over some artists. So the first one is Jeff Koons. This first sculpture is supposed to be a balloon animal. It's not actually made out of balloons. I think it's made out of metal, and it's very large in person. So, and he does several of these. This one is a rabbit, but he has other ones as well. And then this one's a little bit harder to see because it's a little farther away. But this is a dog made out of flowers and plants. And then we'll move on to Louise Bourgeois. This is a spider sculpture. It's kind of freaky looking to me, but this is more of a series that she kind of does as well. She does a lot of these spider sculptures and drawings. You can see the size of this one is pretty big, but she has one that's even more massive than this, and it's very impressive. And I have a link at the end of the presentation if you want to look at that one as well. And then this one next to it are coils with a hand coming out from the middle. And then within the hand is a body. Both of these, this second one is supposed to be kind of motherly instincts, being a caregiver. And then the spider is actually to represent her mom. And then moving on to the last one, the Plenza. He focuses a lot on heads and human form. But before I go any further, does anybody recognize this last picture, this last sculpture? You can unmute yourself or put it in chat if you do, or if you don't. Okay, so this, you don't, yeah. Okay, so this last one is actually in Des Moines. So if you guys ever go to Des Moines, this is something that you're able to see for yourself. I personally didn't know that one of his sculptures was in Des Moines until I started researching him, and I started noticing a pattern that he used for a lot of his sculptures. He uses letters and combines them all together and stacks them on top of one another to create this sort of sculpture. And I knew that one of these was in Des Moines, but I didn't know that it was his. So that was interesting to discover. And then, so he does a lot of heads. So this first picture here is two male heads looking at one another. And this is actually in a pond. And so these sculptures light up. So that's really cool. And then this middle one is a head essentially in the middle of nowhere, right? We're surrounded by fields and gravel roads. And that is another thing I realized, that a lot of his head sculptures are put in the middle of nowhere. They almost don't have a rhyme or reason to be there. But it's purposeful that he does that, clearly, because he does it often. And then just along with those, I wanted to give you guys some other examples to show you that it doesn't have to be so elaborate or just one way. So this first picture is a Herky statue here in Iowa City. They bring it out on campus during graduation every semester because he's wearing the cap and gown, so people can take pictures with this sculpture. And the next one is this one's pretty little, and it's just a cat sculpture. The artist took a picture of his cat and then turned it into a sculpture. And then this third one is the David statue, or sculpture. And this is a very well-known sculpture. And then the last one I wanted to include, because this is more eccentric, and it does more with movement than it does actually human form. So you can see that it can take many different forms. It doesn't really have to be narrowed down to one thing. So for your assignment, we're not going to think about the actual building of the sculpture right now. I want you guys to just focus on the design. So for this assignment, you'll have 3 options of how you want to design your sculpture. So the 3 options are marbling, freedom sculpture, or personality sculpture. So if you do marbling, this would be different for you guys because you guys are going to be at home. But you can look up different ways to marbling. The one that we're going to do in person would be hydro dipping, which involves water and spray paint, and it creates a marbling effect. You can also do marbling with pastels as well. There's some other ways. If you guys do choose to do marbling, you can go ahead and let me know, and I can give you more resources for that. But one of the other two options might be a little bit easier for you guys, just because you guys might not have those materials with you at home. So that's marbling. And then the freedom sculpture, you're going to choose a right or a freedom that you're really passionate about, and you're going to create your sculpture centered around that. So, example, you could choose LGBTQ plus or Black Lives Matter or anything you're really passionate about, and have your surface design represent that. You guys might not be using paint. You guys can use paint, markers, anything that you really have at home and available to you to create this design. And again, don't worry about the sculpture aspect right now, because if you're unable to build a sculpture, there's another option where you guys will just create the design and not actually create the sculpture aspect. So that's the freedom option. And then the personality sculpture, you'll be creating a sculpture and surface design that represents your personality. So your design will most likely represent the things you love or what makes you you. You can go about this any way that you like, as long as it's appropriate. Same with the freedom sculpture. We don't want to have anything inappropriate on these sculptures or on these designs for you guys, right? So those are the three options that you have to choose from. But then, so for your sculpture, instead of the design, you can actually build something out of whatever material you have available to you. And like I said, these sculptures don't have to be made out of wood or metal or anything like that. They can be made out of essentially everyday objects. You can even make them out of cardboard or paper, and just make them steady. It's whatever you want. But if you don't have any materials available to you to actually build this sculpture, you can instead draw your design on a piece of paper or any other thing. If you want to do it on canvas, you can do that as well. I just put a piece of paper because you guys will most likely all have that available to you. But if you're not doing the sculpture and you're just drawing your design, it still needs to be very detailed and elaborate, as if you were drawing it on the sculpture. And in addition to this, you're going to have to write about how you would conduct your sculpture and what form your sculpture would take, and then how this design would be transformed onto the sculpture. So I understand if you're unable to make this sculpture, but I do want you to still be thinking about sculptures while you're working on this piece and how it would work if you were able to do so. I have this demo video of how to make the sculpture, but that's more for the in-person students, because you probably won't have these materials available to you, but you can go ahead and watch that if you want to. But again, so you don't have to make a sculpture if you don't have materials available to you, because I realize you guys don't have the access to the same things we do at school. But you need to be thinking about sculptures while you're making this, and you need to actually put it on a piece of paper and then explain how you would make a sculpture if you're going to. And regardless if you're making one or not, I ask that you please let me know if you're going to make a sculpture or if you're just going to make the design, just so I'm aware of what you guys are planning on. So again, I'll go back to this slide. The three options you have are marbling, freedom sculpture, and personality sculpture. By Wednesday, you guys really need to have decided which one you're going to be working on, or which design you're choosing, and then you should have started working on this by then. And again, on Wednesday, I will ask you guys which design you're choosing and if you're actually making a sculpture or not. So you're going to need to have that decided by then. And hopefully you would have started working on it by then, because it is going to be due Friday at midnight again. Is there any questions that you guys have for me? You can unmute yourself or write in chat. If nobody does have any questions, you guys need to be using this time to start working on your assignment or making up any assignments that you don't have done right now. So I know there's a lot of people that haven't done my graffiti assignment from last week, and I know there's people missing assignments from before that as well. So if you guys are missing assignments, you need to be working on those or starting on this assignment for this week as well. But if you don't have any questions, you can hop off or you can stay on and start working.
Miss Freeze Bailey just joined.
Okay. Bye, Ash. Bye, Emmett. Have a good day. Bye, Aurora. Okay. Bye, Abigail. Bye, Jay. Baby. Looks like she got off.
Okay, well then I'm going to mark her absent. Only counts if you stick around.
Send her an email and see if she needs me to go through that then. Marius, Sasha, and Katya, do you guys have any questions for me?
I don't.
Okay, sounds good.
Alright.